If you've swiped your credit card at a parking meter in San Diego lately, you may have gotten sticker shock. The hourly rate at most meters is now $2.50, twice as much as it was a few weeks ago.
It's been years, if not decades, since we've done something like this.
Jordan Moore is a staffer with the Independent Budget Analyst's office. It found even the city's new rate of $2.50 an hour is a steal compared to private lots and garages. San Diego has billions of dollars in unfunded infrastructure needs and a structural deficit of more than $250 million. Moore says subsidizing parking via discounted rates is getting harder to justify.
The city has large budget problems. There's only so many levers we can pull. So to the extent that there are levers the city can pull to solve these problems, we should pull them.
The big problem with not charging enough for parking is that people tend to use it in ways that are pretty inefficient.
Henry Grabar is a staff writer at Slate Magazine and author of Paved Paradise: How Parking Explains the World.
One thing that happens when parking is underpriced is that it tends to fill up really quick. And so these spaces where there's a lot of demand for parking, but it's not properly priced, generate thousands and thousands of miles of driving every year from people looking for parking spaces.
Grabar's book chronicles a notorious case study of how not to manage city parking meters. In 2008, Chicago was facing a budget crisis, so it signed a deal with a group of Wall Street investors. For $1.15 billion, those investors won the right to lease the city's parking meters for 75 years. The investors promptly jacked up the rates and made back their investment in no time. Today, parking meters in Chicago charge up to $7 an hour.
I think the worst part for Chicago is even if the investors recognized the market clearing price for these meters, the money that was raised is going right into the investors' pockets rather than being funneled into improvements in the city of Chicago.
Committee members, good afternoon, and thank you for having us here today.
Privatizing street parking is nowhere on the agenda in San Diego, but a number of other parking reforms are.
And we're here to give you an update on the results of a parking demand management study that we recently concluded.
At a city council committee meeting last week, staffers shared an analysis of more than 16,000 public parking spaces in meter zones and at major attractions like Balboa Park. To increase the availability of parking, the city is considering a host of changes, like charging for parking on Sundays when private lots raise their rates because free street parking is so hard to find. It could also implement dynamic pricing. For example, meters around Petco Park could get more expensive during ball games. Jordan Moore of the city's Independent Budget Analyst's office says some meters could also get cheaper.
You might be able to lower parking rates at certain times to try to entice demand to come at different times. And so that's what dynamic pricing is all about, is trying to match up that supply and demand to create the optimal situation and utilization of the curb space.
Of course, raising parking rates isn't exactly popular, but the revenue it generates can be spent on things that are popular, like planting trees, fixing sidewalks, and improving public transit service. Things that also reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Moore says San Diego hasn't done much of that because parking meter revenue just hasn't amounted to much.
If you can improve ways for people to get to an area without needing their car, that is a huge benefit to the amount of parking that you need to supply, right? Fewer cars means fewer competition for spots, means that, those spots can either turn over faster, be more readily available, those kinds of things.
As San Diego continues to grow, demand for parking will only get more intense, and the lines between commercial streets and residential streets are increasingly blurred. Many of the new apartments in the city don't come with an off-street parking space. But so far, all the reforms the city is contemplating are for short-term parking around businesses and attractions. Charging more residents for long-term street parking is not on the table, at least for now. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.